War is an invention that has plagued mankind since its birth. It's so widespread that most people have at least one relative that's been related to war in any way. My great grandfather was one of those people. In the 1940s, he was conscripted in the US Army and was a victim of one of the many Japanese war crimes in World War II, the Bataan Death March. But first, let's set the stage. On December 7, 1941, the Japanese Empire declared war on the USA and by extension its territory in the Philippines by attacking Pearl Harbor. Hours after Pearl Harbor, Japan invaded the Philippines. The commander of the United States Army Forces in the Far East, General Douglas MacArthur, claimed he had 130,000 forces ready to repel the Japanese. That was a lie. All he had were 22,000 American and Filipino forces, all of whom were ill-equipped. The Japanese forces obviously pushed them further and further inland until they were forced to retreat to the Bataan Peninsula, a small extremity to the mainland. The hungry and malaria-ridden American forces subsequently lost the Battle of Bataan after fighting for 99 days and surrendering. After the surrender of the American forces, the Japanese were met with a different type of problem. After a good look, they realized they had a lot more prisoners than they expected. At first, they just killed the extras, but they devised a plan to get all the prisoners they have from all over the island into one place. Thus, the Death March was born. POWs were marched into Mariveles in the southeast corner of Bataan, the starting point of the march. Then they were to march north to Pampanga and then to Capas, where they marched an extra 14 kilometers to Camp O'Donnell, where they were to stay. The entire march was around 106 kilometers. During the march, prisoners were beaten. Any soldier that slowed down for any reason like thirst or tiredness were killed, either by being shot, stabbed, or at worst, beheaded. Many more vile acts like torture and the pulling of gold teeth were also committed. This was all because Japanese soldiers considered surrender to be disgusting and prisoners to be subhuman. Japanese Prime Minister Hideki Tojo once said, if Americans set foot in Japan, I'd rather not say that. Due to poor conditions, diseases like dysentery started to spread, which is bad since when a disease famous for being a medieval sickness pops up in modern times, it usually means horrible things are occurring. When the prisoners reached San Fernando midway into their trip, they were shoved into extremely hot trucks where many died due to lack of oxygen. Once they reached their destination of Camp O'Donnell, even more men died due to the overall harshness of the trip. Then they were divided into groups for slave labor. However, in October, only the Filipino prisoners were let go.
When I was young, my grandmother used to tell me stories about life during the Second World War. One story in particular that remained vivid in my memories was about the story of my grandfather being part of the infamous Bataan Death March in the Philippines in 1942. They were famished, and the only drink available to them was muddy water, probably collected from the puddles in the streets that formed from the rain. He eventually managed to successfully escape.
As said by my dad, my great-grandfather was also a victim of the Death March. He was conscripted by the US Army whether he liked it or not and was captured by the Japanese in 1942. He, however, was extremely lucky since the Japanese were negligent with their prisoners. They wouldn't notice if anybody was missing. My great-grandfather was able to escape after he noticed guards weren't watching him. At night, he and a group of others lied down and rolled into a hill nearby. They then hid out in the forest until they were able to find a house to stay at. Then they discarded their uniforms and left to go back to their houses. News of the march spread like wildfire. It was used as propaganda by the Americans to further the cause against the Japanese. By 1944, the Japanese started to lose their grip on the Philippines and the American forces, led again by General Douglas MacArthur, went on the offensive. They first landed on the island of Leyte and gained land from the center outwards. After securing Leyte, they moved on to Mindoro, hoping to make air bases there. With the help of the Philippine guerrilla resistance, the Americans had great amounts of intel and knowledge of the land. Their last target were the northern islands of Luzon, where they fought in the capital, Manila. The campaign was successful. By 1945, they were cleaning up the remnants of the Japanese army when Japanese Emperor Hirohito declared the surrender of Japan on the radio, formally ending the war. Homa Masaharu, the Japanese general in charge of the march, was executed in 1945. The death toll of the march is unknown, with numbers ranging from 26,000 Filipinos and 1,500 Americans dying at destination and 3,000 deaths en route, although numbers are inconclusive. However, of the 22,000 Americans captured, only 15,000 remained when they got home, a death rate of 30%. Prisoners of other Axis nations only had a 3% death rate, a measly number compared to the death toll of the march. The Bataan Death March was one of the worst events in Philippine history, but it could serve as a useful lesson for future generations. I sincerely hope that one day the Death March is long forgotten and things like it are impossible. So, have a good day. Thank you for watching.